This video will detail the reimbursement process for small businesses that have received grant funding through the Small Business Assistance Program. Genesee County has established the Small Business Assistance Program to assist low to moderate income business owners with access to short-term working capital in order to mitigate the impacts of revenue losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and associated executive orders. Once your application has been reviewed, you will be notified of the approval or denial of the application and the amount of your grant award. This amount can be up to $10,000. After you are notified of the grant award amount, you will be required to sign a 2-year grant agreement between your business and the Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Commission. Now that you have your grant award amount and your grant agreement is signed, it is time to start filling out your reimbursement request. Reimbursement requests can be for any eligible expenses that occurred after March 16, 2020 and before December 31, 2020. You may submit multiple reimbursements as your company accrues expenses if you do not have eligible expenses that total your grant award at this time. The following are examples of eligible expenses that the grant funds can be utilized for: supplies or inventory, personal protective equipment for staff, equipment installation to ensure a safe environment for workers and customers, rent or mortgage, this does not include property taxes, utilities, payroll or wages, and any other similar expenses that occur in the ordinary course of the recipient's business or any expenses to respond to the pandemic. Now we will go over some examples of ineligible expenses. If you are unsure if something is eligible or not, please do not hesitate to contact the GCMPC office. Food or beverage items, personal expenses not associated with the business, for example, a personal cell phone bill or transportation costs, fees, penalties, legal expenses or fines, construction or major rehabilitation of buildings, payment of property taxes, assistance to a nonprofit or government agency, assistance to a political or religious organization, assistance to gambling facilities or adult entertainment venues, payment of rent, mortgage, and utilities for a residence that is a home-based business. And it is important to note that the sales tax of any items purchased must be deducted from the reimbursement request. You may be asking yourself, what exactly will GCMPC be looking for when I submit my request? The first thing that we will be looking for is that the reimbursement request is for expenses that are eligible under the grant and that those expenses occurred during the accepted time frame, which is March 16, 2020 until December 31, 2020. We will also be looking for documentation that shows purchase backup. This would include any invoices, receipts, purchase orders, or any other type of purchasing documentation showing the items that the reimbursement request is for. Lastly, the request will have to include proof of payment. This includes any payroll documentation for employees, credit or debit card statements from purchases, or copies of checks written from purchases. If purchases are made with a credit card, you must provide the purchase backup and the credit card statement showing the balances paid. If purchases are made with a check, please include a copy of the check or the check number from the purchase. For example, your company has purchased $3,000 in PPE over the course of April and May 2020 and has paid for the supplies with a company credit card. In order to be reimbursed for this cost, your reimbursement must include the purchase documentation for the PPE, whether that is a receipt, invoice, or purchase order. If there is sales tax included for the purchase, deduct the amount from your request. HUD grants cannot be used for sales tax. You would also include the credit card statement showing that the charge for $3,000 has been paid on the credit card. All of this information and documentation will be summarized on a reimbursement request and accomplishment data form that will be explained shortly. There are two main types of reimbursements that would be submitted by your business: One of the eligible expenses is for payroll. If you are requesting a reimbursement for payroll, you must include a list of current employees, their address and pay rates, timesheets, and pay stubs for all hours worked being reimbursed. If you are submitting a reimbursement for mortgage, rent, utilities, equipment, or supplies expenses, you must submit receipts, invoices, bills, or other purchase backup documentation, and the credit card statements, copies of checks, or other proof of payment. When reviewing the request, staff will make sure that the reimbursement request and all required documentation are complete and sufficient. Additional documentation may be requested if what is provided is not believed to be adequate. Staff will also be looking to ensure there is not a duplication of benefits with the reimbursement request. Staff will be reviewing the accomplishment data, which will be information on your employees and their demographics. It is important to include employee data with every reimbursement request because this data is submitted to HUD. The following screen will go over filling out the reimbursement request form and the accomplishment data information. On this screen are the first 2 pages of the reimbursement request and accomplishment report. We will walk through each section of the document. Section 1 contains project information. Section 2 is to briefly describe what accomplishments have been achieved with the funding to date. You will detail how this funding has helped with preparing for, responding to, or preventing COVID-19. Section 3 is where you will detail the requested expenses. In this section, you will detail each expense using the purchase backup documentation that you will be submitting to separate expenses. Section 4 is to ensure there is not a duplication of benefits with this funding. You will provide a description of any other sources of grant funding your business has received for COVID-19 response. If you fail to report other sources of funding that your company has received for COVID-19 response, you may have to pay back your grant allocation to GCMPC. Section 5 is for reporting employee data. This is where you will include information on the number of employees retained as a result of this funding, as well as the number of positions created, if applicable. The last section of the reimbursement request and accomplishment report is for documenting the demographics of all current employees. Please fill this section out to the best of your ability and knowledge, as this information is reported to HUD. Now that we have covered everything, you are probably wondering when you will receive your funds. Staff will process the request within 15 business days of receiving all required documentation. Within 15 days of your submission, a paper check will be mailed or electronic deposit of funds will be complete. For those receiving paper checks, this means that your funds may arrive after 15 business days. Throughout the 2-year grant agreement that you have signed with GCMPC, you will have to submit quarterly performance reports for your business. Within the QPR, you must confirm that your business has retained at least one low to moderate income position within your company. GCMPC staff will notify businesses in a timely manner when QPRs are due. If you still have questions regarding the reimbursement process or any other aspect of the Small Business Assistance Program, please do not hesitate to contact the Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Commission office by phone or email and ask for Damon Fortney, our lead community development planner that is managing the CARES Act funding.